Hey, beautiful chaos listeners. Welcome back for another deep dive.
It's great to be here.
So today we're going to be exploring the life of Alan Turing.
One of the most fascinating figures of the 20th century, really.
Absolutely. And, especially relevant for our audience, given his work in computer science, AI, and then also, of course, his struggles as a gay man in a time when it was very much not okay to be gay.
It's a story that I think really resonates on multiple levels.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of different sources to draw on for this. We've got biographical excerpts, some academic papers, some historical accounts.
A real mix, so we can really try to get a full picture of the man.
Yeah, so let's jump right in, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the sources talks about this book called Natural Wonders that Turing was just captivated by as a kid.
Yeah, apparently it sparked this real intense curiosity about science in him and how things worked. He was especially fascinated by the human body.
And I think it's interesting to think about that in the context of his later work, right? Like
Yeah.
the idea of creating artificial intelligence. It's almost like you can trace a line back to that early fascination with how the human body works.
I think that's a great point. And speaking of influences, we also have to consider his parents, right? It sounds like his father was very tolerant, very encouraging of his intellectual pursuits.
Yeah, but his mother seems like she had more uh, traditional expectations for him.
It's like these two contrasting forces sort of
Huh.
shaped his development.
Yeah, pushing him in different directions, maybe.
And then, of course, there's the impact of Christopher Morcom, this close friend he had at school.
Yeah, they bonded over their shared love of science and math,
But then Morcom dies very suddenly at a young age.
which had a profound effect on Turing.
Absolutely. He even started exploring spiritual questions, trying to grapple with the nature of consciousness, the meaning of life.
It's really interesting to see how that personal tragedy sort of intertwined with his intellectual development.
Yeah, you can't really separate the two, can you?
Right. And speaking of his education, he ends up at Sherborne School, which is this very traditional British boarding school.
And he's clearly brilliant, especially at math.
But it seems like he never really fit in there. He was always kind of butting heads with the system, with the expectations.
Like he was wired to think differently.
Yeah, always questioning, always pushing boundaries. And that, I think, really sets the stage for what he would go on to accomplish.
It's a pattern we see throughout his life, isn't it?
Yeah, constantly challenging the status quo, both in his scientific work and in his personal life.
And then he gets to Cambridge, and it's like he finally finds an environment where he can truly thrive.
Yeah, he just dives headfirst into mathematics, starts engaging with all these groundbreaking ideas like quantum mechanics. He even starts thinking about the implications of quantum mechanics for free will.
It's like his mind was just constantly searching for those deeper layers of understanding.
Absolutely. And it's at Cambridge that he writes this revolutionary paper on computable numbers.
Yes, 1936. This is where he introduces the concept of the Turing machine.
Which, for those of you just joining us, the Turing machine isn't a physical machine.
It's a theoretical model, really, but it laid the foundation for modern computers.
It's like he created the blueprint for the digital age before the technology even existed.
And what's really amazing is that even at this early stage, he's already thinking about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, he's having these conversations with colleagues about machines that can learn, which is just mind-blowing considering that computers were still this, very abstract concept for most people back then.
He was truly ahead of his time.
In all of this, while he's also grappling with his own identity, his sexuality.
Yeah, the sources we have suggest that he was aware of being gay from a young age.
But, of course, this is a time when homosexuality is illegal. So he's living in this world where a fundamental part of who he is considered criminal.
It must have been incredibly difficult.
Absolutely. And it's, one of the many tragedies of his story, right? That this brilliant mind was forced to live in secrecy and fear because of societal prejudice.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what he might have been able to accomplish if he had lived in a more accepting time.
Right, if he hadn't been burdened by that constant fear of persecution.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder, I think, for all of us about the importance of creating a world where everyone can be themselves without fear of judgment or discrimination.
Yeah, because who knows how much potential is being stifled, how much creativity is being lost, because people are afraid to be who they truly are.
It's a question worth pondering, for sure.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, World War II erupts, which, changes everything.
Yeah, this is where his work at Bletchley Park comes in, right?
Exactly. Bletchley Park, this top secret code breaking center.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does, but the stakes were incredibly high.
I mean, they were literally trying to break the German Enigma code.
And Turing played a key role in that effort.
So for those of us who aren't, cryptography experts, can you explain what Enigma was and why it was so difficult to crack?
Sure. So Enigma was this machine that the Germans used to encrypt their military communications.
And it was considered, like, unbreakable at the time.
Pretty much. The settings on the machine change every day. So even if you managed to figure out the code one day, it would be completely different the next.
So it was this constant race against time.
Exactly. And that's where Turing's brilliance comes in. He helped develop a machine called the bomb, which was specifically designed to decipher Enigma messages.
So the bomb was like a counter machine.
You could say that. It was an electromechanical device that could rapidly test different Enigma settings.
So it basically automated the process of code breaking.
Exactly. And it was a huge breakthrough. Turing's work at Bletchley Park is estimated to have shortened the war by years.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, think about the number of lives saved.
It's really hard to overstate the impact of his work.
And from what I've read, Turing wasn't exactly your stereotypical war hero.
He was known for being a bit eccentric, a bit of a loner.
Yeah, some of the sources describe him as, quite reclusive at times.
He was definitely a unique personality, but I think those traits were part of what made him such a brilliant thinker.
Right, he wasn't afraid to think differently, to challenge assumptions.
And that's what allowed him to see solutions that others couldn't.
But it's also important to remember that, code breaking has its ethical implications.
Of course, it raises questions about privacy, surveillance, the balance between security and freedom.
And it's particularly poignant in Turing's case, considering what would happen to him later on.
Yeah, it's a tragic irony. The very systems he helped develop would ultimately be used against him.
But let's move on to the post-war period. Turing continues his work in computer science, right?
Absolutely. He's involved in developing some of the first stored program computers.
So this is where we really start to see the foundation for the modern computer age being laid.
Right. These machines weren't just about crunching numbers anymore. They could store and execute programs.
And that was a game changer, right?
Absolutely. It paved the way for the software revolution, for the development of programming languages, for everything we take for granted today.
And then in 1950, he publishes this really influential paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence,
Where he introduces the famous Turing Tests.
which, for those who aren't familiar, is basically a way of trying to determine whether a machine can exhibit intelligent behavior that's indistinguishable from a human.
It's a thought experiment that's still debated today.
It raises all these fascinating questions about consciousness, about what it means to think.
And it shows how far ahead of his time Turing was. He was thinking about these things decades before they became mainstream.
But he wasn't just focused on computers, right? He was interested in all sorts of scientific questions.
That's right. He also did some groundbreaking work in morphogenesis, which is the study of how biological patterns form.
So he was a true polymath, a real Renaissance man.
Absolutely. His curiosity knew no bounds.
Which makes what happened to him all the more tragic. In 1952, he's arrested and convicted for gross indecency.
Which was basically a legal term for homosexuality at the time.
And he was forced to undergo chemical castration.
It was a horrific injustice. This man who had done so much for his country, for the world, was persecuted simply for being who he was.
It's just heartbreaking.
And it reminds us of the dark side of human history, the way society can turn on those who are different.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always linear, that we have to constantly fight for equality and justice.
Absolutely. And Turing's story is a powerful reminder of that.
And it's just awful to think about, the impact that this must have had on him.
Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine the emotional toll that kind of persecution would take.
And tragically, just 2 years after his conviction, he dies.
Yeah, in 1954, under circumstances that are widely believed to be suicide.
It's a loss it's hard to even comprehend, really. I mean, what else could he have achieved if he'd been allowed to live freely to continue his work?
It's impossible to know, but it's a question that haunts you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it makes you think about all the other brilliant minds throughout history who've been silenced, who've been pushed to the margins because of who they are.
Yeah, the world has lost so much potential because of prejudice and discrimination.
But thankfully, Turing's story doesn't end there, right?
No, not at all. I mean, over time, there's been this growing recognition of his contributions and the injustice that he faced.
Yeah, in 2013, he received a posthumous royal pardon.
And his life and work have been celebrated in countless ways. I mean, there have been books, films. He's even on the British 50-pound note.
It's a step towards righting a wrong, but it's also a reminder that we have to remain vigilant, that we have to keep fighting for equality.
Absolutely. Especially for the LGBTQ plus community in STEM fields.
Hmm.
We need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to contribute their talents, to make their mark on the world.
Yeah, without fear of persecution or discrimination.
Exactly. And Turing's story, I think, is a powerful reminder of why that's so important.
So for our listeners, for those of you who are interested in AI, in the future of technology, what do you think is the most crucial takeaway from Turing's life and work?
I think it's this. As we develop these increasingly sophisticated AI systems, we have to remember that they're tools. They're tools created by humans.
Right, and they reflect our values, our biases, our limitations.
Exactly. So we have a responsibility to guide the development of AI in a direction that benefits humanity.
While also being mindful of the potential risks.
Absolutely. And Turing himself, he was keenly aware of these issues.
Yeah, I mean, his work wasn't just about building machines. It was about understanding the nature of intelligence, the implications of creating machines that could think.
And he was asking these questions decades ago.
Yeah.
But they're more relevant than ever today.
Absolutely. So as we stand on the brink of this new age of AI, it's not just about the code, right?
No, it's about the human questions behind it.
It's about who we are, what we value, the kind of future we want to create.
And I think Turing's story, both his triumphs and his tragedies, is a powerful reminder of what's at stake.
Absolutely. So for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this, we'll have some resources in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely check out the Alan Turing Institute. They're doing some really fascinating work.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.